That night, I had no clue it was going to turn into something far beyond just an ordinary evening. Nathan's father wanted him to go on his usual weekend trip, but at the last minute I asked him to stay. A simple request, right? But deep down, I sensed that quiet storm brewing inside him, maybe because it was building up inside me too. The morning felt different. I was making tea in the kitchen, keeping my movements light, almost silent. Nathan sat at the table, pretending to read, but it was clear his mind was elsewhere. Then suddenly I turned to him and said, "Nathan, can you hand me that cup?" My voice was softer than usual, like I was holding something back. There was a strange feeling inside me, but I made sure my eyes wouldn't give anything away. When he handed me the cup, I let my fingers brush against his, just a second longer than necessary. I looked at him like I was waiting for him to read between the lines. We stood there in silence for a moment before I finally spoke again. "Actually, since it's just us here today, there are some things I'd like to talk about. I'm usually composed, but today something felt different. My gut never lies." "You're not a kid anymore, Nathan," I started, choosing my words carefully. "No secrets between us, all right?" My words hit him in a way I could see but not explain. "Claire, what's going on? Why are you talking like this?" he asked, his voice uneasy. I gave him a slight smile, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind that hinted at something deeper, like a riddle waiting to be solved. "I've been thinking about the space between us, Nathan," I said softly. "Every day you're getting older and it feels like something is shifting between us." I could tell his heart was racing now. He was probably feeling the same confusion that had taken root in me. "Claire, maybe you're just imagining things," he said, attempting a laugh, but the weakness in his smile gave him away. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. "But don't you feel it too, Nathan? Something's changing between us, isn't it?" I whispered, soft but sure, like a breeze stirring the air. He didn't have an answer. I knew he didn't know how to explain it. Things between us were starting to blur. "This is impossible, Claire," he finally said, breaking the silence. "You're my father's wife." I moved a little closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "Nathan, we're not hurting anyone. No one else has to understand this," I said, my voice calm but steady. I was unlocking something buried deep within both of us. I could feel him getting tangled in his thoughts, just like I was. Part of me knew this was wrong, but the other part, it was already lost. We just sat there for a moment, the air between us thick, charged with an energy we didn't know how to name. I reached over and touched the cushion beside him. "Nathan, you know this isn't just in your head, right? This thing between us? It's real," I said, not breaking eye contact. He took a deep breath and turned his head, as if looking away would make it all disappear. This, whatever this was, felt wrong, impossible, but at the same time, it felt inevitable. "Claire, people won't understand," he muttered, shaking his head. I gave him a slow, measured smile, my gaze locked onto his. "People don't always have to understand, Nathan. We just have to be honest with ourselves," I said. And that tension, that pull between us, it was becoming harder and harder to ignore. That night, everything shifted. The walls I had put up were gone. Things would never be the same. It was dark and stormy outside. The rain drummed against the windows, each drop echoing the conflict inside me. I had lit the fireplace, pretending to read a book, but I could feel his eyes on me, flickering toward me every now and then. Every step he took, my heart wanted to pull away, but damn it, if I wasn't just as drawn to him. "Stay here until the storm eases up," I said, my voice calm but almost daring him. Nathan hesitated for only a moment before settling into the chair by the fire. The silence took over, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, brimming with everything we weren't saying. We kept looking away, but we both knew there was something lingering in the air between us, thick and undeniable. "Nathan, do you know how much you love this house?" I asked suddenly, my voice carrying the weight of old memories. My eyes glowed with nostalgia. He looked away, but I caught the small smile he was trying to suppress. "Of course, Claire. I grew up here. My whole childhood is in these walls," he said softly. I continued, thoughtful. "I remember you sliding down those stairs every morning. Your father would be at the table having breakfast, and you just talk and talk before running back up to your room." I exhaled deeply. "None of us wanted things to change, right?" Nathan nodded, but he couldn't hide from my gaze. For a moment it felt like we had traveled back in time, reliving those years within these walls. The more we talked, the more those buried feelings surfaced, bit by bit. "Sometimes I think we should have some kind of boundary between us, Nathan," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But then the thought of not seeing you again, that scares me." That hit him. I could see it in his eyes. He looked at me, lost for words. We had both let our guards down, too exposed to take anything back now. "I get it, Claire. Sometimes when I'm with you, I don't know what to say or what to feel, but somehow I'm just glad to be here," he said, his voice rough and low. His words lit something inside me. The firelight cast flickering shadows across my face, drawing out every emotion I had been trying to suppress. "Every time you're here, Nathan, everything just makes sense. Maybe this bond we have, maybe it's deeper than we ever realized," I murmured. Silence fell between us again. No more words, just the weight of it all pressing down on us. The pull between us was like gravity, something neither of us could escape, even if we knew we should. As the rain eased outside, I placed my hand on his shoulder, my touch lingering for a moment too long. We let ourselves exist in that space, unspoken emotions hanging between us. I tried to fight it, but with Nathan sitting so close, those walls I had built didn't stand a chance. When Nathan's hand landed on my leg, a rush of heat coursed through me. Every feeling, every suppressed thought came crashing out in that second. We locked eyes, caught in a pull neither of us could define. The only sound louder than the silence was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Claire," he murmured, his voice strained, rough. It's not like we're in control here, is it?" I placed my hand over his, barely able to speak past the knot forming in my throat. "Nathan, you're my stepson," I said, the words breaking me apart inside. "This is wrong, but right now I feel so lost." My eyes stung, but I couldn't pull away. I saw the same struggle, the same longing reflected in his expression. Nathan's fingers pressed more firmly against my leg, his touch sending shivers down my spine. "Claire, I won't lie. I don't want to stop this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But every time I try to fight it, I end up right back here with you." A part of me wanted to let go, to pull away, to run from whatever was happening between us. But his touch had me glued in place, trapped at the edge of a line we both knew we shouldn't cross. I tried to push him back, but my body refused to move. "Nathan, losing myself in this, it scares me," I confessed, but I was already leaning closer, drawn into the moment. "This isn't right, but being here with you, it feels too damn real." I tried to look away, to break the spell between us, but I couldn't. Whatever was happening, whatever had been simmering beneath the surface for so long, had finally broken through. Logic blurred, reason melted away, and for a second, the world shrank down to just this room, just us. The heat radiating from him, the way his breath mingled with mine, the forbidden pull between us. It was overwhelming. Even as every rational part of me screamed to stop, I found myself sinking deeper into the feeling, losing myself in something I could no longer control. I thought it was just an innocent mistake, something fleeting that would pass, but I was wrong. That day marked the beginning of a tangled, forbidden chapter of my life. Even now, as I recount this story, my hands tremble, not just from confession, but from confronting my own conflict, shame, and desire. Ethan, my stepfather, was a man of quiet authority. Mature, confident, and composed, he carried an effortless presence that filled any room. He was my mother's second husband, and though always polite, he had remained distant. We coexisted without much interaction, until that evening when everything changed. My mother, Valerie, had gone out as usual, meeting friends for one of her many social outings, leaving the house to Ethan and me. I had retreated to my room, standing in front of the mirror in nothing but my undergarments, ready to slip into a dress. The soft creak of the door broke the silence, sending a shiver up my spine. "Olivia, your door's open." Ethan's deep voice came from the doorway. His tone was calm but firm, enough to jolt me. I turned my head, locking eyes with him. Time stood still. My breath hitched as he hesitated, his hand gripping the doorknob, debating whether to step in or step away. His gaze lingered, too long, too deliberate. A rush of confusion coursed through me, followed by something else, something I couldn't yet name. After a few suspended moments, he cleared his throat. "I'm sorry," he muttered, finally looking away. But there was something in his voice, hesitation, as if he wasn't entirely sure he regretted it. He stepped back, shutting the door behind him, yet the weight of his presence lingered. My pulse was erratic, my breath unsteady. "It's fine," I murmured, though every fiber of my being knew it wasn't. Something had shifted, and I couldn't ignore it. I told myself it was just an awkward mistake, something that would fade. But I was wrong. Days later, it happened again. This time, the moment stretched even further, an unspoken energy simmering beneath the surface. Up until that point, everything could have been excused. A mistimed glance, an uncomfortable coincidence. But I soon realized that it wouldn't stop there. That evening had been the beginning of something I couldn't control. The following day, my mother and I attended a wedding. It was for one of her close friends, a second marriage filled with extravagant displays of love and champagne-drenched toasts. My mother was her usual effervescent self, dressed to impress, exuding an effortless charm. Valerie had always been devoted to excitement, to fun, though not necessarily to loyalty in its deepest form. Unlike her, I wasn't particularly thrilled about going, but Ethan's presence at the event changed everything. We arrived together, stepping into the grand reception hall, filled with the hum of chatter and clinking glasses. As the evening progressed, I found my eyes wandering toward him more often than they should have. Had he always been this striking, this composed, this magnetic? Had I simply never noticed before? The way he moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, the way his deep voice carried in conversation, the way his fingers adjusted his cufflinks. Every detail fascinated me in ways I had never allowed myself to acknowledge before. At one point, I caught him watching me. Just a flicker of a moment, but long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. My stomach tightened, my pulse hammering against my ribs. This was wrong, I knew it, and yet I didn't look away. Neither did he. As the night unfolded, the tension between us only grew. A brush of his arm against mine as we passed in the crowded ballroom. The way his gaze flickered downward for just a second longer than appropriate. Every interaction felt like walking on the edge of a blade, dangerously close to crossing a line neither of us should even approach. Under the soft glow of the wedding lights, Ethan exuded confidence. His suit was perfectly tailored, and every step he took carried effortless charm. Yet I fought the thoughts creeping into my mind. "Don't be ridiculous, Olivia," I told myself, but my eyes kept straying back to him. A lively dance song filled the air, and my mother, Valerie, twirled across the dance floor with Ethan. She wore her usual carefree smile, her laughter blending with the music. Then, mid-dance, she suddenly turned to me with a mischievous grin. "Ethan, ask Olivia to dance," she called out. "I need to check in with some friends." Something inside me jolted awake. My heart pounded. Ethan hesitated for just a moment before his lips curved into a smile. He extended his hand toward me, his expression calm, confident. "Come on, Olivia," he said lightly. "You'll have to show me a few moves. Valerie already embarrassed me out here." With his easygoing demeanor, refusing felt impossible. I reached out hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sure." As we walked onto the dance floor, my nerves prickled under the watchful gaze of the crowd. The moment his hand settled on my waist, my breath hitched. His cologne, the warmth of his touch, it was all too real. This story is about to take a turn. If you're intrigued, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. Your support means everything. Don't forget to like and comment. As we danced, Ethan's gaze never left mine. "Olivia, I had no idea you were this talented," he said, his voice laced with warmth. There was something in his tone, something that stirred something deep within me. I'm just doing my best, I murmured, though the tremble in my voice betrayed me. Ethan's smile softened. Don't sell yourself short. His grip on my waist grew firmer. This isn't just dancing, we're sharing something. Don't you feel it? A sharp breath caught in my throat. In that moment, I realized that what was happening between us wasn't just about the dance. My body moved in time with the music, but my mind and heart spun wildly. The crowd, my mother, the noise. It all faded. There was only Ethan, his hands grounding me, the intensity between us impossible to ignore. As we swayed, his voice came low and steady, slicing through my whirlwind of thoughts. I wanted to apologize for the other day, he admitted. I just meant to give you a heads up, but walking in like that, I realized it was probably a little disrespectful to your space. Warmth surged through me, my cheeks burned. I lowered my gaze, my fingers tightening slightly in his grasp, but I wanted to ease the tension. It's okay, I said quickly, my voice shaking slightly. Really, it's no big deal. Things like that happen. Ethan hesitated, but he didn't stop moving, his hold on me steady. His eyes held mine, unwavering. Still, he continued, voice softer now, if it made you uncomfortable, I want you to know that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to get your attention. My heartbeat stuttered. I wasn't uncomfortable, I blurted out, hoping to reassure him. Yet, at the same time, I was fighting something else, a strange thrill rising within me. Really, it's fine. The air between us thickened as we continued to dance. I was acutely aware of Ethan's hand on my waist, the sincerity in his gaze stirring something deep within me, but the intensity of the moment didn't last long. As the music faded to an end, we slowed and finally stopped dancing. Thank you, Ethan said with a gentle smile. You're truly a wonderful dance partner. I nodded, my heart still racing. Thank you too, I replied softly before quickly retreating to my table. As I sat down, I noticed Ethan lingering for a moment, his eyes still on me. Then he finally turned and moved toward another table. But in that moment, I knew this wasn't over. If anything, it had just begun. When my mother, Valerie, returned to the wedding hall, she approached with a bright smile. What a lovely dance, she exclaimed, clapping her hands. You both looked amazing out there. Her compliment only made me more flustered, but I forced a small smile. It was fun, I said, keeping my voice even. Ethan simply nodded politely, a barely visible smile playing on his lips. Valerie continued excitedly. Guess what? After the wedding, the girls and I are having a bachelorette party, completely girls only. Ethan, you'll take Olivia home, right? Ethan smiled lightly. Of course, that's no problem, he replied casually. At that moment, an uneasy feeling settled in my chest. It was unfair how easily my mother brushed him aside on a night when she should have been by his side. But she didn't seem to care. Having fun with her friends was clearly her priority. I pushed the discomfort down, pretending it didn't bother me as much as it did. When the wedding ended, Ethan and I walked toward the car together. Valerie had already left with her friends, eager to enjoy the rest of the night elsewhere. We got into the car, and Ethan quietly started the engine. The silence between us was almost tangible, stretching between us like an unspoken truth. I stared out the window, unsure of what to say, but feeling like I should say something. It was Ethan who finally broke the silence. "Valerie, she has different priorities sometimes," he said, his tone even. His eyes remained fixed on the road, but there was a hint of something else beneath his words. "Even so, it surprises me how thoughtless she can be at times. Nights like these, you'd expect your partner to be by your side, wouldn't you?" His words struck a chord deep within me. The idea of someone like Ethan, strong, composed, and charismatic, feeling lonely, tugged at my heart. I gathered my thoughts, trying to steady my voice. "Yes," I admitted, my words barely above a whisper. "At times like these, a little more consideration is important." Ethan nodded slightly. "You're right," he said, his voice calm but laced with something deeper. "But I guess every relationship is different." In that moment, an unspoken connection built between us. I felt as though I could see his loneliness, feel it, even as I struggled to suppress my own emotions. That brief conversation drew us closer, the bond between us growing quietly yet undeniably. When we arrived home, Ethan stepped out first, walking around to open the door for me. I stepped out slowly, the tension between us thick in the cool night air. "Good night," he said, his voice soft. I hesitated, sensing he wasn't quite ready to leave. He stood near the doorway, his presence lingering. As I turned toward my room, something held me back, a strange, undeniable urge that I couldn't ignore. I turned to face him once more. "Ethan?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Would you like to come in? Maybe we could talk for a while." He didn't respond immediately. His expression shifted as if weighing the unspoken meaning behind my words. The night felt impossibly still, the tension between us more palpable than ever. My heart pounded as I waited for his answer, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. Even though I could see in Ethan's eyes that he truly wanted to stay, he politely declined. After what had happened the other day, he seemed hesitant. I had invited him in to show that I had moved past it, that it wasn't a big deal anymore. But instead, I found myself retreating to my room, replaying Valerie's behavior and Ethan's words over and over in my mind. I could feel his loneliness, and it affected me more than I wanted to admit. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I tried to calm myself down, but the thoughts in my head refused to quiet. Why was I thinking about him so much? Why couldn't I stop replaying the moment he had accidentally walked into my room? The hours crept by and the house grew quieter. Valerie still hadn't returned, and I had no idea what Ethan was doing. As I wrestled with my thoughts, the sudden sound of my door opening made me freeze. I looked up to see Ethan standing in the doorway. His eyes held a sense of determination, but his expression was conflicted. I quickly stood up. "Ethan," I said, unable to hide the surprise in my voice, "what are you doing here?" He closed the door behind him, but didn't step any further into the room. Instead, he stood still, as if debating with himself. "Olivia," he began, his voice low but laden with emotion. "You're right. Valerie, she isn't fair to me. But tonight, I don't care about what she is or isn't doing." He took a step closer, his gaze locking onto mine. "For a while now, "I've felt something for you," he admitted, his voice steady but tinged with hesitation, "especially after that day I walked into your room by accident. I can't get it out of my head,